This video is a non-fiction November TBR as well as a general November TBR that will probably slide into December. I have a big trip planned at the end of November that will last for all of December, which will dictate what books I can read later on.
Hello, future editing Alyssa here. I actually ended up deciding not to include my TBR of what I'll be reading in December, which is heavily influenced by the fact I'll be traveling. So if you want to know what I'll be reading while I'm in London, in Botswana, Namibia, Germany, and Spain, as well as maybe a few other countries, then stay tuned and I will have a future TBR.
I'm going to start with a book that's already been mentioned I've only made 2 videos so far on BookTube. This would be my 3rd, and I've already mentioned this in both of them, so I'm only going to briefly mention it. That is The Devil in the White City by Erik Larson. This book is about the Chicago World's Fair of 1892, and there was a serial killer on the loose during that fair. That's really all that I know for sure about it. It's really beautifully written. I'm excited about it. It doesn't really feel like a nonfiction book, so I'm really excited to dig into this. And because this is a library copy, I need to finish this one before I go on my trip around the 20th. The next book that I read was, on my TBR, but I did already read it, is Your Art Will Save Your Life by Beth Pickens. Like I said, I already read this book, and before I did, what I knew going into it was, or what I'd gathered was that Beth Pickens was an artist consultant in, I think, the San Francisco area, and I thought that this would be about the unique perspective that she had on some of the potholes or the struggles that artists have in the contemporary art world. I know that she did things like writing grants and, like orchestrating exhibitions or things like that. That's what I thought this was sort of going to be about, but it wasn't. It's completely politics. It's only like 10% of it is really relative to the art world or artists, in my opinion. I might share more about it later in a wrap-up, I might not, but I didn't care for this book, but that was on my TBR. I'm just going to mention it because otherwise it seems like I'm not reading very many nonfiction books for Nonfiction November, but this makes 4, so I'm just going to mention this. It is super short, but I read it, is So You've Been Publicly Shamed by Jon Ronson, which always makes me want to say Ron Swanson. Jon Ronson. I want to read this book because it's about public shaming online, on social media, which is really sort of a new, relatively new, given like the digital age, way of conducting ourselves socially. There's online bullying, and then there's like people having their lives destroyed because they say the wrong thing or post something being ignorant or short-sighted on their Twitter account or something like that. I think that this is a really relevant book, which is why I want to read it now. In fact, I've wanted to read this for a while, and I want to stop putting it off because I feel like it would be good information for me to acquire right now in this digital age and to go forward my life with having read this book. The next book that I have, and the last nonfiction book on my TBR, is The Judgment of Paris, The Revolutionary Decade That Gave the World Impressionism by Ross King. I have had this book on my list for a really long time. I studied art history, I've mentioned this before, and I had 2 different professors independently recommend this book. I know relatively little of what this book is about, except for that it's a well-researched and in-depth look of the social, political, economic context of the early Impressionist era, and a look at the art scene of the early Impressionists. From the art that's in the middle of the book, it looks like we get a lot of Manet and Monet and Colbert. I'm really excited to get a little more in-depth history about this time period, so I'm excited to read this one. Also, this is the only one out of the 4 books that I've shared that I own, and so this is the one I'm going to be taking at the end of the month, and will definitely carry on into December because it is a very densely written book with a lot of words on each page, so I think this is going to last me really well through my trip. Now on to the fiction part of my November TBR. The first one is Autumn by Ali Smith. This book is, so far I can tell, a story about two people, an older man who is in, I think it's called deep sleep, towards the end of his life. Presumably he's about to die, and a younger or mid-20s girl who was his neighbor growing up, and we're seeing sort of the present and the past flashbacks to their relationship. I'm already sensing that there are a lot of sort of political undertones, and from what I know about this book, it is politically relevant to Brexit. I think it's kind of about Brexit and sort of currently politically relevant, which is one of the reasons that I chose to read it right now, despite the fact that it's Nonfiction November and I have like only 4 nonfiction books that I'm reading, and I would normally like to read more than that. One of the reasons that I'm not is because I have a few books that I really still want to read at this time of year in fall, and this is one of them because as it's named autumn and this is the right time of year to read it, it feels like. It's also politically relevant. I don't want to just wait till next year. So this has made it onto my TBR for this month. So far I'm not exactly sure what to think because I've only heard raving reviews about this book, and I do like it, but I tend to be better off if I don't have high expectations of a book before I go into it, because somehow I'm just always slightly disappointed if I feel like I'm going to love it. I don't know. Anyway, but I do like the writing style. I can tell that she's being very playful, but it's not too uncomfortable or too foreign. It's almost stream of consciousness in some parts. I guess playful is sort of the word that comes to mind. Hopefully I'll have more to say once I've finished it, but I am liking it. I'm definitely liking it. I don't know if I love it yet, but it's very enjoyable. If I am able to, I would really like to read The Trumpet of Krakow by Erik P. Kelly. I don't really know anything about this book. I saw that it was a Newbery winner and it caught my eye. I know that it takes place, it's a fictional work, and it takes place in medieval Krakow. I've taken classes on medieval history and I really enjoy medieval history, but I don't know or have never read very much or anything taking place in Eastern Europe during the Middle Ages, especially anything Slavic. So this seems like fun, and it's a short book. I think it's a children's book. So this seemed like maybe like a really fun read to slip in. If I have time, I would love to. That is my wrap up for, or nope, that's not wrap up. That's a wrap on my TBR. Thank you so much for watching this video and caring about my TBR. If you have read any of these books, I'd love to know your thoughts on them, if you think I'm going to like them, as well as whatever you're reading, especially for Nonfiction November. I didn't get to pick up, I'm not going to be able to pick up as much nonfiction as I wish I could have, so I'm probably going to try and make sure I squeeze some in more than normal in January as well. So thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful reading day, and I'll talk to you all later. Bye! Cheeto, don't do it!